Welcome to Surviving to Thriving, the podcast for women ready to reclaim their energy, clarity, and life. I'm Dr. Rachel Yeager, and I know what it's like to feel exhausted, overwhelmed, and stuck. Here, we go beyond quick fixes to explore the science and soul of healing, covering stress resilience, brain reset, hormone balance, nervous system support, and connecting with your intuition. If you're ready to stop surviving and start thriving, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. We're going to talk about physical blocks to nervous system regulation. Your nervous system is your brain plus all the nerves and all of its connection to the nerves in your body. And you may have heard a lot about the vagus nerve. That's a really popular one. And that is definitely a big part of our nervous system. It helps us be in that rest and heal and digest response instead of in the fight or flight. But a lot of people are told to do nervous system regulation things like breathing and other activities without actually necessarily having a nervous system that's physically capable of doing those things. So then people think that they're failing. So we're going to dive into the actual physical nervous system blocks that can be present. So if you feel jumpy, reactive, if you feel like you're wired, even if you're also tired at the same time, if you feel like you get overstimulated easily, you're sensitive to lights and noises, or if your brain feels really foggy, it's actually usually more than just stress. There's usually other things that are going on in our brain. So if we take a naturopathic look at the brain, we're talking about brain health. We're not just talking about Alzheimer's and things people think of with memory and cognition and how quickly you can think through things. It's actually the entire system of how your cells are signaling and how your neurons are signaling. And I think we forget how much stuff starts in our brain. Our entire hormone cascade for sex hormones actually starts in our brain. All of our endocrine processes with our thyroid function, all of that, the signals are coming from our brain. Even our cortisol, which is our stress hormone. Yes, our adrenal glands sit down above our kidneys, but the original signal is actually coming from our brain. So our brain is quite literally the master control, the executive, the CEO of everything that's going on in our body. The interesting thing that I think is overlooked a lot is we have literal chemical roadblocks that make it hard for your brain and nerves to communicate properly. So, for example, if someone's having thyroid issues and they've done everything to support their thyroid, they probably haven't looked at their brain yet. Is there anything that's going on that's making it hard for their brain and the neurons to send the signals and coordinate the signals that need to be sent to the thyroid? So regulation requires clear signaling. What I mean by regulation is this idea that we are living in the rest, heal, and digest state instead of being in this fight or flight state as our default. And we want to respond appropriately. If a mountain lion is there, we want to be in fight or flight. We don't want to stay in our rest, heal, kumbaya state. So the problem becomes when our signal is noisy or when we're not feeling flexible and adaptable to be able to come back to center. And then our nervous system stays in survival mode. And then all of our cells, they stop communicating properly. Everything gets really chaotic. And our body's natural intelligence and that natural nature life force that we have, that is our body's innate drive to heal and its innate coherence and how our cells are usually organized. All of that gets disrupted when we're in this survival mode. So our nervous system is made of this huge electrical and chemical network. Our nerves send electrical messages. Those messages are shaped by chemical messengers. Inflammation and metabolic waste can distort that signal. When we say chemical, think of like biochemistry, think of, different cascades and pathways. And if you've ever heard that magnesium is needed for over 300 pathways in our body, that's biochemistry. That's getting down to the chemical level of what's happening in our body. So an analogy to make this more real life would be, it's like trying to FaceTime without having Wi-Fi or having bad Wi-Fi. You wouldn't blame the phone. It's that the signal is unstable. And you could blame the phone. There could be issues with your phone too. But if you can't send any signals out, then it doesn't even matter, what else you're doing, because those signals aren't going to be received. So let's talk about some of the physical factors that block regulation. Histamine. This is a huge one. This is like our nervous system's alarm mode. If you've heard of mast cell issues, this is tied to histamine. I'm going to use histamine really broadly to include a lot of other things that are also released at the same time as histamine. A lot of people say, oh, I'm having a histamine dump. And actually, you're also feeling leukotrienes and all these other chemical messengers. But we're going to put them all in the same group as histamine because they're all released from mast cells, which is a type of white blood cell, for the same reasons. So histamine increases our alertness and reactivity. If we have too much, our body feels really on edge and fired up. Histamine can also make us sleepy because of other ways that it impacts us. But in general, histamine actually is more of an excitatory hormone in the brain. And so it's linked to anxiety, insomnia, being really sensitive to stimuli like sensory sensitivity, like lights and noises, having racing thoughts, and then racing heart or feeling palpitations in your heart. So having high histamine keeps our nervous system in watch mode. Another physical barrier that can come up is cytokines. So this is like brain inflammation noise. Our cytokines are inflammatory messengers. So whenever we get the flu or something, our body pumps out a bunch of IL-6 and TNF alpha, and we have all of these signalers happening that are like, create inflammation. We need to fight off these foreign invaders. And our cytokines do really interesting things. They actually make us feel antisocial, so we don't go spread the flu to other people. And they have a lot of effects. But in general, they are inflammatory. When they're elevated, they're going to create brain fog. They're going to make our mood drop. We can feel anxious. They're going to make us irritable. Irritability is a huge one with cytokines. And they're going to cause fatigue. So it's like this loud, blaring fire alarm of inflammation. That's literally the best analogy for cytokines. Like it's a fire alarm that is not turning off. It's just going and going. And so it's just creating, at some point, chaos, and it's interfering with calm signaling because the noise isn't turning off. It's staying there. Another one is glutamate. This is like our overstimulation chemical. So this is a big physical blockade for nervous system regulation. So this one will keep our brain from feeling calm. It'll keep us from being able to be in that rest and heal state. And glutamate, actually high glutamate, is associated with seizures. So glutamate is definitely considered an overstimulation excitatory chemical in the brain. It can make us feel super wired. Again, causes light and sound sensitivity. It keeps you feeling on edge. You have a lot of trouble relaxing. And then we can also get like hyper focus or anxiety. So interestingly enough, this is one of those things that gets demonized, but it's kind of like cortisol. It's also bad if it's very low. Glutamate drops low when we've had long-term exposures to things like mold or other chronic infections like Lyme. And so with glutamate, it's all about having the right balance. Some people genetically seem to have low levels of glutamate and they're more predisposed to ADHD because glutamate does help us focus. So high glutamate can actually feel like taking Adderall if you don't need Adderall, if someone were to take that and have that hyper excitatory response in the body. So it's like too much of a go signal. And in our brain, we have things that are the brake and we have the gas, and glutamate is a very strong gas pedal. So it keeps our system stuck in very high alert. Glutamate can also be found in food. So MSG is a big source. And then there's more natural sources of glutamate that are created from hydrolyzed proteins and things, even if you don't add MSG, even if it's not explicitly on the label. So monosodium glutamate can cause people to have like terrible reactions. I remember one time I ate at a restaurant that had like a pho style soup. And I, in the car on the way home, like literally had a crawling out of my body. I turned beet red. My body was so flushed. My heart rate was insane. I felt like I was going to throw up. I felt like I was passing out. It felt like I was having a full on almost allergic reaction without having any anaphylactic symptoms. And my system is super sensitive to glutamate, but also at the time I was living in mold and I didn't really know it. And so when you're having inflammatory exposures like mold, it's going to make your blood-brain barrier more permeable. So you're not going to be able to filter things as well. And it makes your brain more susceptible to things. So I was a lot more susceptible to glutamate. I can handle a little accidental MSG now without having that kind of reaction. But that really opened my eyes to how intense glutamate reactions can be for people. And all of these things, people can wake up in the middle of the night and just feel like you're just so on edge. If you get a histamine dump in the middle of the night, if you get these like huge cytokine release in the middle of the night, glutamate, that could keep you up if it's overactive in the middle of the night. And a lot of people have issues with these things in the night, especially because our brain is changing its normal level of activity. So we're naturally getting some shifts in some of our regulatory programs in our brain, but also we get a drop in our cortisol. Cortisol is like our natural steroid. So we're losing some of that anti-inflammatory protection at night just because our cortisol has to drop for our melatonin sleep hormone to rise. So a fourth physical factor is ammonia and metabolic waste. This can cause brain fog, irritability. This can cause a crawling out of your skin, awful sensation where people are just filled with total dread and you just feel toxic. Like you feel hot inside. I've dealt with functionally high ammonia. If you actually had high ammonia to the point that it was showing up on labs, then you'd probably be in the ER because your system would be starting to shut down and your brain would be shutting down and you'd be getting severe confusion. So most people that are dealing with ammonia issues, it's happening while you're working through a chronic infection like Lyme or you're working through mold because ammonia is a metabolic waste product. So anytime that our immune system's having to work super hard, especially for fighting off different pathogens in the body that can release their own ammonia or at least their precursors that end up being ammonia, then this causes a lot of issues for people. So ammonia is a normal waste product and it's supposed to be cleared. And again, our cells are like little factories. So if they're working harder, they're going to make more ammonia. And when ammonia and these other metabolic waste products accumulate, they really affect the brain. They affect clarity and mood. We end up with brain fog, irritability, that awful unease anxiety feeling. We can get a pressure feeling in the head, and then it becomes hard to focus and people can feel like really forgetful. It's because our nervous system doesn't function well in a toxic internal environment. Like literally dumping toxins on a plant and being like, why isn't it functioning? Why isn't it growing? Our body is the same way. If we're having this huge buildup of toxic products in our system, it's going to be really hard to function normally. A fifth factor is catecholamine surges. So this is like stress chemical spikes. So imagine someone injecting adrenaline into your system. Chronic stress can create these spikes, but also anything that causes the body to be in a stress response can create these spikes. After I was recovering from having the COVID spike protein in my system, I was having POTS. Like I had POTS, which is where you have low blood pressure, at least in my case, it was low blood pressure. And then you have a very high heart rate and your autonomic nervous system, so the automatic part of your brain that regulates your breathing and your pulse and your blood pressure, that part gets really dysregulated and it's unable to do its normal activities that keeps your system normal and keeps you having all these normal vital signs. So I would just stand up to go walk to the kitchen and my body thought I was running a marathon. If I laid down, my body freaked out about the change in my blood pressure. So when we have these kind of POTS like symptoms, we're very much prone to getting catecholamine spikes because our body's backup is to release a bunch of stress chemicals if it thinks that we're going into shock or it thinks something is really wrong or it thinks that its normal organ functioning isn't working and so it has to do something else. So my body thought, oh my gosh, her blood pressure is not staying stable. Like I've got to release a huge amount of adrenaline, which is basically, if you've ever had to inject with an EpiPen or if you've gone to the hospital for an anaphylactic allergic reaction, they're injecting you with adrenaline. So it's the same thing. It's how your body naturally overcomes shock. And so our body will naturally release its own EpiPen for us. And the problem is this is never comfortable, but the problem becomes if this is routinely happening, and especially if it's happening at night, so you can't sleep. It's very common to get catecholamine surges at night for those same reasons that we talked about earlier, unfortunately. So these are not all of the physical factors out there that can block regulation, but they're probably the top 5 in terms of looking at the biochemistry of what's going on in the body. And these are usually being missed because this is like a biochemical cell function. This isn't, oh, we just need to increase your vitamin D. Like this is what's happening on a very specific cellular level. And all of these things interact, they feed into each other. If you are having a brain that's having a lot of ammonia, then you're going to be more sensitive to glutamate, for example. And another one actually I didn't mention is if you eat a lot of sulfur, the body metabolizes that into sulfites, which can be really irritating to the system. So that'd be in that metabolic category as well. And so that's another category where, people, even if they used to tolerate sulfur containing foods and sulfur containing supplements or medications, then after they get a gut microbiome shift, so after you have food poisoning or C. diff, or if your system's having a sensitive flare because it's not detoxing well, then our liver and our other metabolic processes, we're not able to process the sulfur and get rid of it and excrete it. And so we end up having a very similar reaction to if we have high ammonia or high glutamate. We get the same kind of anxiety. So all of these things are pretty common, pretty overlooked. They're a big part of pictures of different conditions that people think of as affecting the brain. So like we know that the gut affects the brain, but actually a lot of our sulfite metabolism can be a response of the gut. And we know that our liver function and our ability to detox affects our brain. And having a functional buildup of ammonia can be tied to our liver not working very well. So all of these things that we know impact us, this is kind of the biochemical level of what's actually going on. And it can take us a while to shift things like overall your infection load in the body. Luckily, there are tools that we can use to lower ammonia in real time, prevent catecholamine surges, balance out glutamate, put the brake on glutamate, lower cytokines, lower that inflammation, and then help block histamine and lower histamine at multiple different levels in that cascade. So there's things we can do so that we don't have to have unnecessary suffering while our body works through balancing out whatever the root cause is that's causing these surges to happen. I find that if we can do a little damage control and we can get some support on board for these physical factors, then people are able to do their nervous system regulation work so much better. So what this would mean would be you finally would feel a benefit from doing breath work or meditation, because those all help a lot. And those are super important for being in a regulated state, being in that rest and heal subconscious brain state. But just breathing and meditating doesn't remove these physical interferences that a lot of people with complex chronic illness are dealing with. So we're not dismissing mind-body tools. I use them all the time. They're absolutely essential. We're just naming like a foundation layer that I think is often overlooked when it comes to people wanting to support their nervous system. So how can we support our physical nervous system so that we can hold a regulated brain? We can have a brain that can plan and make good decisions and that feels happy and that wants to strive to make diet changes or whatever we need to do to improve our overall health. So we can support pathways so that we can have clearer, healthy signals from our cells. Certain nutrients actually support detox pathways. If we're low in certain B vitamins, we can't even run certain detox pathways, for example. There are so many nutrients out there. Sometimes it's helpful to go in and, depending on someone's situation specifically, give like a supplement to help with that detox pathway. And if genetics are a part of this, then, there is such thing as someone really benefiting from taking a certain supplement ongoing to compensate for genetics. But a lot of these nutrients we can get from healthy foods. The problem is when you're already in this glutamate, inflammation, histamine kind of flare, it's really hard to do anything. It's hard to have energy to even look at grocery shopping for new food. Like you're just hanging in there day to day. So sometimes it's hard to start with the diet part. So I don't always recommend starting at diet when we can actually support the brain first. There are certain nutrients that protect our neurons. So they actually protect our brain cells and keep them healthy. There are certain nutrients that stabilize our signaling, and they can help stabilize that balance between the gas pedal in our brain and the brake, which is the nice, calming, relaxing, grounded part of our brain. Certain nutrients and different nutraceuticals reduce inflammation. So again, a lot of these come from food. Some of these could come from supplements. It really depends on what an individual person's system needs. In general, we're usually looking at mineral support, protein building blocks, antioxidant systems in the body. We're looking at gut support, liver clearance, and a lot more. So when our terrain improves, when the physical scaffolding and what we're working with in terms of our ecosystem, that's our natural default in our body, when that improves, then our nervous system can calm But a lot of people think that in order to shift their train in their ecosystem, they have to start with, I'm going to start running 5 miles a day and I'm going to change my diet completely and I'm going to do this and that. And it's honestly pretty impossible to do those things in a sustainable way that you're going to keep up if your brain is inflamed and struggling. Because how can we even get to a place where we feel calm enough and motivated enough and we have the executive capacity to plan things out if our brain isn't functioning well? When I addressed the root causes of the things that were causing me to have so much inflammation in my brain, when I did a lot of emotional regulation and I learned different somatic techniques, how to talk to my body, I got really into energy work, how to make sure that my chi is flowing in my body so I don't have blockages. All these things helped my nervous system feel safe. I wasn't able to get to a fully adaptable, flexible nervous system regulation state without doing the physical part. I literally tried everything and I really had to go in and help physically support my brain. So I even had the scaffolding and the physical biochemical pathways available to even create new neural pathways and even be able to calm my amygdala and my nervous system so that my body felt safe. So I did not become calm and regulated and feel like I could handle different health challenges that came up by trying harder. For me, it was about removing the interference. And I can say pretty much with confidence, after having worked with at least hundreds and hundreds of people by now, that is what most people need. It's pretty rare to be able to just breathe your way through something when someone's literally injecting you with an EpiPen, essentially. So just the healing message here is that healing is not about forcing relaxation. It's not about forcing these new mindsets or forcing you to do breathing or forcing you to do yoga when you can't even feel comfortably still in your own system. It's about creating internal conditions that allow the safety to emerge. And I think a huge part of what we're ignoring overall in the holistic realm is the physical part of the nervous system and having actually a healthy brain that can even hold a healthy subconscious signaling system. So it's not what mindset are you missing, but what is blocking your system. Okay, well, I hope that this was helpful. If you are struggling with getting to a place where you feel like your nervous system is regulated, you're struggling being in a place where every time you have a symptom, you don't react and go into a spin out, and you're struggling knowing that you will be able to wind down to sleep well at night. All those are pretty common signs that our nervous system is dysregulated. And don't beat yourself up. This is something that our body is working through a lot of processes. And so physically supporting your brain might be an easier way out for you so that you don't feel like you have to just mindset your way, become Buddha to overcome all of this in the midst of all the suffering. There's a lot we can do to reduce unnecessary suffering. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in to Surviving to Thriving. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with a friend and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. This show is for education and inspiration, not medical advice. For tools and next steps to restore your health, energy, and peace of mind, visit my website or connect with me online. The links are in the show notes. Until next time, keep believing. Thriving is possible for you.